And now we move to the presentation session, paper presentation session 5. Now I invite Dr. K. Murugan, Assistant Professor, Senior Scale, Department of Mathematics, the Madurai Diravium Sai Manavar Hindu College, Tirunelveli. Uh, uh, he had received more than 6 awards and more than 60 works of he published more than 50 research papers. Uh, he successfully completed 2 UGC major projects. He is a well-eminent person in both teaching and academic, teaching and research area. And now I welcome Dr. Murugan sir to hand over the session. Okay, welcome sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your warm welcome, for your nice introduction. Shall I start, sir? Am I audible, sir?
Okay,
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes,
shall I start? Sir, is there any time bound for participants?
Maximum 6 minutes, sir.
Maximum 6 minutes. Okay, thank you. Okay. So, good morning to all. And the fifth paper presentation session starts now. The first presentation is by Ms. Priyanka. The title of her topic is Non-Smooth Variational Inequalities on Hadamard Manifolds.
Hello. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am. So, start your presentation.
Yes, sir. Is my slide showing?
Yes, visible. But not a single slide is not visible. Turn your mobile. No.
Is this slide showing?
Yes. Please proceed.
Good morning, sir. I'm Priyanka, Research Psychology Department of Mathematics, University of Jammu. My topic is non-smooth variational inequalities on Hadamard manifold. Introduction part, elements from manifolds. Second part, third is Riemann manifold and Hadamard manifold. Fourth, main results. Fifth, references. In introduction part, as variational inequalities have been extended from linear spaces to non-linear spaces, namely Hadamard manifolds and Riemannian manifolds. In this paper, we study the non-smooth variational inequalities and Minpin non-smooth variational inequalities in terms of bifunction that are considered in the setting of Hadamard manifolds. Also, we refer gap functions for both non-variational inequalities, and these are references. First of all, what is manifold? Manifold of dimension n is topological space which has following properties. First is M is Hausdorff. Next, it is Euclidean of dimension n, locally Euclidean. Third, countable basis of open set. Example, a manifold of dimension is locally homomorphic to an open interval. A manifold of dimension 2 is locally homomorphic to open disk, and so on. Let M be a m-dimensional differential manifold. Let TUM is a tangent space at a point U, which is a real vector space of same dimension as the manifold. The collection of tangent space is called tangent bundle and it is denoted by Tm. A vector field on a manifold M is C infinity McPhee, that is from manifold to tangent space, such that for each U belongs to M, it assigns a tangent vector belongs to TUM. Let M be a finite dimensional Riemannian manifold. We denote the scalar product on TUM with norm. Let del be the Levi-Civita. Levi-Civita in the Riemannian geometry we use specifying derivative along tangent vectors of a manifold. So a curve from gamma UB from closed interval to 0, 1 to M is known as geodesic if gamma UV 0 equal to U, gamma UV at 1 equal to V, and Levi-Civita derivative at equal to 0 on closed interval. Riemannian manifold M is a real smooth manifold cubed with a positive definite inner product on the tangent space. It is said to be complete if for all U, all geodesic emanating from U are defined for all lambda belongs to R. And this is a definition of arc length defined at UB, and the Riemannian distance denoted by DUV equal to infimum of length of the gamma UB, where the infimum is taken over all piecewise smooth curves. My first definition is a simply connected complete Riemannian manifold of non-positive sectional curvature is called Hadamard manifold. The exponential map defined at TUM to M by exponential U y equal to gamma y at 1 U for each y belongs to TUM, where gamma is the geodesic starting from U with velocity v, that is gamma u at 0 equal to U and gamma at 0 equal to y. Proposition depending on Hadamard manifold. Let M be a Hadamard manifold and U belongs to M. Then exponential function is a diffeomorphism. Diffeomorphism that is a function from two manifolds which is homeomorphism. First, second is differentiable function. Third, inverse is also differentiable. And for any 2 points UV belongs to M, there exists a unique minimal geodesic joining U to M such that gamma UV at lambda equal to exponential function at U, lambda exponential inverse U at B. In particular, the exponential map and its inverse are continuous on Hadamard manifold. Next is a geodesic convex. A subset K of a Riemannian manifold is said to be geodesic convex if for any two distinct points this belongs to K. Curve geodesic belongs to K. Next, let K be a geodesic convex subset of Riemannian manifold, and this function is said to be geodesic convex if for any 2 points and the function less than equal to this. The geodesic convex hull of a set K subset of M is the smallest geodesic convex subset of M contains K and it is denoted by this. Now the main definition, non-smooth variation inequalities in terms of bifunction. For this, let K be a non-empty geodesic convex subset of a Hadamard manifold and H from K cross Tm to R union extended real line is a y function. Then this definition for U not belongs to K such that this function greater than equal to 0 and the minty non-smooth variation inequality is the dual part, that is this function less than equal to 0. Now a bifunction is said to be geodesic upper sign continuous for any pair of distinct points if this less than equal to 0. In this implies this function equal to greater than equal to 0. Next, pseudo monotone. When this h function greater than equal to 0 implies this dual less than equal to 0. Now this is a definition of gap function on Hadamard manifold. An extended real valued function g is said to be gap function for both type of non-variation inequalities, that is NVIP and MNVIP, if it satisfies two conditions: GU less than equal to 0 for all U belongs to K, and GU not equal to 0 if and only if U not is the solution of both inequalities. Now main results First is let K be a non-empty subset of Hadamard manifold and F from F is the set valued function such that for each U belongs to K, Fu is non-empty and geodesic convex, and for each V belongs to K, F inverse V equal to U belongs to K such that V belongs to for U is open in K. Then there exists a fixed point U naught of F, that is U naught belongs to Fu naught if and only if there is a non-empty compact geodesic convex subset C of K such that Fu intersection G is non-empty for all U belongs to C. Next result is let K be a non-empty subset of a Hadamard manifold M and A be a subset of K cross K such that following assumptions holds. The set is closed, the set is geodesic convex, and this U belongs to A for all U belongs to K. Next, fourth is for non-empty compact geodesic convex subset C of K. For each U belongs to K, there exists B belongs to K such that UB doesn't belongs to A. Then there exists U naught belongs to K such that U naught cross K subset of A. Now third result is let K be a non-empty compact geodesic convex subset of a Hadamard manifold M and H be a bifunction which is pseudo-monotone. I have defined it earlier. If these conditions are following conditions are satisfied, then Minty non-smooth variation inequality has a solution U naught belongs to K. Moreover, if it is geodesic upper sign continuous such that it is positively homogeneous in the second argument, then U naught belongs to K is the solution of NBIP. Now, the result for gap function, if h this function equal to 0 for all U belongs to K, then the function GU defined by infimum of this is a gap function for non-smooth variation inequality problem. And if this next theorem is if this function is equal to supremum of this is a gap function for Minty non-smooth variation inequality problems. And these are my references. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any questions from the participants? Is there any question? Okay, madam. Nice presentation. Now I call Mr. Sankait Gupta for his presentation on the topic online education using learning management systems. Mr. Sankait Gupta. Okay, you may start, sir. Sir, it's not audible.
Sanket sir, please unmute your mic. Sanket sir, please unmute your mic.
Am I audible, sir?
Now audible, sir.
Okay.
Now audible.
Okay.
Proceed. I can proceed. You proceed.
Okay. I have divided my paper into four main parts. In the first part, I have explained the concept of online education. In the second part, how this concept of online education can be implemented. In the third part, I have explained the concept of learning management systems and its various types. And in the last and the most important part, I have explained the working of Moodle learning management system. Now, first of all, online education. As we all are aware that the concept of online education has been there for the last couple of years, but due to this COVID-19 situation, it has become even more important to make maximum use of this online education. So online education means acquiring knowledge through the use of instructions provided over the internet. In simple means, we can say that the teacher can make available the courses or the curriculum to the students over the internet, and the students can access this information over the internet by making use of any of the devices like mobile phone, smartphones, tablets, laptops, and any other device. So this is all about online education. Now, how the concept of online education can be implemented in reality. There are two main parts in the implementation of the online education. There is first is development and the second is the publication. Development means first the teacher has to create the course which the teacher wants to give access to the students. He first have to create the course, means he has to create the contents of the course. This content is called as e-content, and this e-content can be in any form like textual form like PDF file, Word file, Excel file, or it can be an audio clip or video lecture or images or pictures. It can be in any form. So there are a number of tools freely available over the internet, which the teacher can make use of and create his or her own e-content of the course. Now, first, once the e-content has been created, there should be some platform over the internet where this e-content can be uploaded so that the students can access it by just sitting at their homes by making use of their smartphones and computers or laptops. Now, it is not so easy that on the internet you go to the internet and upload your content and your students can access this content. There should be some organized platform that can give the complete package where the teacher can upload the content, teacher can see the activities of the students, teacher can have a real-time chat with the students, the teacher can assign the various tasks like assignments, the teacher can conduct online tests. So there should be a organized platform. This platform we call in the technical terms as learning management system. So a learning management system is a platform which allows a teacher to upload his content and keep record of all the activities of the students. Now, what is a learning management system? It is a software application for the administration, documentation, tracking, reporting, and delivery of educational courses. So, in short, we can say that learning management system is a platform over the internet where the teacher can upload the contents of his course and he can create the user's passwords and username and passwords and give access to the students so that the students can access that course over the learning management system or over the internet. A number of alternative terms are used these days for the learning management systems like course management system, CMS, virtual learning environment, VLE, or e-learning system. Now, a good learning management system must possess the following features. First of all, it must be easy for the users to use it. Who are the users? Obviously, our students are the users of the learning management system. It must be easy for the students to access the courses, to do the courses, to perform the various activities that have been assigned by the teacher. Second one, it must come in a responsive design. It is an important part. What we mean with the responsive design? It means that responsive design means the creating the web page or the contents in such a way that looks good on all the devices. Because some of the students may be using it on the smartphone, some are using on the laptop, on the computer system. So it must contain the characteristics that it can automatically adjust for different screen sizes. Another one is assessment. It must provide for an appropriate environment for conducting tests and assessments like multiple choice questions. The teacher can create the quiz or online tests, etc. It must provide a system for reporting, generating reports of the various student activities like tests, attendance, etc. Another one is the security. It is also an important part. A good LMS must provide some security features for the data that is available on the LMS. Now, by the data we mean there are two types of data available over the LMS. First one is the data about the students, that is information about the students, because once the teacher creates the accounts of the users, the teacher needs the complete details of students like student name, age, address, his or her email ID, contact number. All this information is vital information, and another information is the key content that has been created by the teacher. So both the information, both type of data is very important, and LMS must provide certain security features to secure the data of the students and the content, because it is available over the internet. Now, next is it must provide some management system for course and user management. Once the teacher creates the courses, the teacher can create multiple courses, and there can be a number of users in all the courses. So there should be some management system through which the teacher can manage the various courses and also manage the user accounts. Now, categories. Now, basically, the LMS are divided into two major categories. The first one is the proprietary or the paid learning management system, and the second one is the open source learning management system. The proprietary or the paid are the privately owned, and if a teacher wants to use this paid LMS, he has to pay some certain amount. The teacher or the institution can pay the amount and use these paid versions. Some of the examples of paid learning management systems are Blackboard Learn, Docebo, Talent LMS, Loop, GoSkills. And another one is the open source learning management system. And the open source learning management systems are freely available over the internet. The teacher or the user can download it and use it. It comes with the concept of sharing and collaboration. It is free of cost. Some of the examples are Moodle, OpenEdX, Canvas, Sakai, etc. Now, this is the general description of Blackboard Learning Management System, which is a paid learning management system. Its latest version is 6.5. It is written in Java programming language, and its areas are K-12, higher education. It works in government and business sectors also. General description of Docebo LMS, latest version 7.5, written in PHP. It works in the government agencies, institutions, and mid-sized to large organizations. Another Canvas, it is a free learning management system. Its latest version is this, Android 1.11, and for Apple phones 1.11. It is written in Ruby on Rails, and it works in higher education and business sector. Now, the main part of my paper is the Moodle LMS. What is Moodle Learning Management System? Moodle is a freely available. Actually, Moodle comes in both the versions, free and paid. I'm talking about the free version of the Moodle LMS. It is freely available. It is an open source software. And the full form of Moodle is Modular Object Oriented Dynamic Learning Environment. It comes in a responsive web design. As I have already explained, responsive web design means it can automatically adjust for different screen sizes. If a student opens it in a mobile phone or computer system, he will see the same contents in an organized way. A mobile app is also available of Moodle LMS. Just go to Google Play Store and download the mobile app, and students can easily use this mobile app. The current version of Moodle LMS is 3.11. It is available in more than 100 languages across the globe. Now look at certain stats that tells the true story of the Moodle LMS. Across the world, near about 247 countries are using this. In these 247 countries, there are near about 191,000 sites have already been created on the Moodle LMS. Currently, these number of sites are currently running, and 37 million courses are running on these various sites. And the main important thing is the 278 million, near about 278 million users around the world are currently using these 37 million courses by making use of this Moodle learning management system. If we talk about in India, there are 7,118 number of this Moodle. जी sir. Hello. जी sir.
Sir, you proceed. You proceed.
Okay. The Moodle LMS supports any format. By any format, we mean if the teacher wants to upload the content, he can upload the content in any form like text files, picture files, audio, video, etc. And on the other hand, the students can also upload the information. If suppose the teacher has given some sort of assignment to the student can submit this assignment in any format like PDF file, Word file, Excel file, audio or video, picture or images. So it supports both the formats in both the ways, at the teacher end and at the student end also. And one important feature that I was personally impressed, because I have personally used and currently using this Moodle LMS, the big blue button. The big blue button feature of Moodle LMS allows the teacher to have a real-time synchronous video conferencing with his or her students. He can have video lecture with the students by making use of this Moodle LMS. Now, the question arises, there are a number of applications are available to conduct the video lectures or the meetings, like Zoom is there, WebEx is there, and Google Meet is there that we are currently using for this conference. But these are the applications that are freely available. But if the teacher is using the Moodle, he does not have to go for another apps to have video lectures. He can make use of big blue button feature of Moodle LMS. Now, how the Moodle LMS can be used? If a teacher wants to create a course, he just go to the site moodlecloud.com. And after going to this site, the teacher can create his or her account by making use of his email ID. After the account has been created, the teacher can create the website. The name of the website can be personalized or the institutional name. Like I have created my Moodle LMS site and its name is gdcrajouri.moodlecloud.com. because my institution name is Government Degree College, Rajouri. So there are two versions, free and paid. Obviously, I'm talking about free version. In free version, there are certain limitations. 200 users are allowed and 400 MB of data can be uploaded by the teacher maximum. But if the teacher uses this space smartly, then he can make use of this 400 MB in a better way. Because suppose a teacher has created his own video lectures, and suppose one video lecture is of 100 MB or 200 MB, and there are 10 or 20 video lectures. So the teacher can upload these videos on YouTube or any other platform and just make use of the URL or link of the video lecture, paste this link on the Moodle LMS so that students can access it. A teacher can create unlimited number of courses. There is no limitation on the number of courses. If the teacher wants to create a course, he just have to go follow the path, go to the home, click on site administration, then click on courses, then click on manage courses and categories. After going into manage courses and categories, the teacher can create any number of courses. In the same way, the teacher can add the new users by clicking on the home, go to site administration, then users, then accounts, then add a new user. When the teacher will click on the button add a new user, a new window will get open and it will ask for the information of the students like student name, email ID, contact number, age, class. After filling all these information, the teacher can create the username and password of that student. And after creating the username and password, the teacher can give these username password to the respective students and the students can log into the Moodle course. Functionalities of the Moodle LMS. The functionalities of Moodle LMS are divided into two main categories, resources and activities. Resources means the content that the teacher can upload. It can be in the form of a book or a file or a folder, label, page, URL, etc. And activities form the teacher that can have various activities, can involve his students into various activities, like he can give assignment to the students. He can make use of big blue button to communicate with the students. He can have chat to have text-based real-time synchronous discussions like WhatsApp group. He can conduct multiple choice question. He can make use of external tools. He can design the feedback form to get the feedback from the students, forum, glossary, workshop, quiz. So many activities are available. So these are some screenshots of the Moodle that I am currently using. And at last, these are my references. So That was all from my side. Thank you.
Any question from the participant side? Any queries? Okay. Sir, very nice presentation.
Thank you.
So the next presentation is by Mr. Uttam Kumar. Uttam Kumar, and the title is Managerial Efficiency with the Price Sensitive Demand. Uttam Kumar.
I am ready. I am ready, sir.
Yes, Uttam Kumar.
Respected Professor Murugan and participants, good afternoon. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, audible, audible. You proceed.
Okay, thank you. My research area is inventory modeling, and the title of my research paper is Managerial Efficiency with Price Sensitive Demand. With effect of the pricing strategy, there are so many problems. In some of case, if we reduce the price, the demand will be generated and excess. And if we increase the price, the demand will be decreases. Or in some of cases, the demand will be stable. We will focus on this problem actually. In this paper, we have extended the contribution of U in view of assumption the set of selling price is dynamically before entering into the next cycle. That means there are so many cycles and we have to put the price in a different cycle. Like this. This is the line draw. This is the time cycle from 0 to L. That means L is a length of cycle. And what we have to do, we divided this time cycle into n equal parts. That means one parts will be L upon n. And suppose this is capital T. So the first interval from 0 to T, second interval from T to capital 2T, and so on. And the prices are the P1 in a first cycle, P2 in second cycle, P3 in second cycle. And in this manner that these prices are in decreasing manner. What is our object? Our object is to find n. How much times we have to divide this time cycle so as we get the maximum profit. Second one, optimize the selling price P1, P2, Pn in these interval 0 to T, T to 2T, and so on. These are the assumptions of my model. Formulation. Here is we divided into n equal parts, and the equation is not shown here. Please just a minute. Please just a minute. Please just a minute. शेयर इसकी
चल तो शेयर है ऑलरेडी।
नहीं जी मेरी नहीं जी इसकी मोबाइल की जल्दी करो ना शेयर।
तो एक ही जगह से हो सकती है।
पहले तो आप अलग कर देंगे उसको शेयर करो
पहले यहाँ पे।
अच्छा ठीक है सर जस्ट ए मिनट सर। I am joining again, sir. Please wait. Balu? Hello? Hello?
Proceed, sir. You proceed.
Hello, am I audible?
Audible, sir, or audible?
Hello?
You are audible.
Hello?
You are audible, you proceed.
Am I audible?
Yes. You are audible.
Hello.
Is it audible?
Sir, you are
Hello.
audible. You are audible. You proceed.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Sorry for the interruptions. Okay, that's all. Now we consider here the demand A minus BT minus beta Pj. Beta is a parameter associated with price, which is a different for the different product. And we consider here A minus BT. That means the demand is in decreasing order. But we set here minus beta Pj such a way, if we decrease the price, then the demand will be generated gradually. So the total demand or the total sold product is denoted by S, and here given in equation second. And holding cost is just H into the on-hand inventory. H is the holding cost per unit of the item, and which is given in equation number 8. And the revenue is price into demand. That will be given in equation 9. And we define here the function FNP. That means profit function, which is revenue minus holding cost minus purchasing cost minus advertising cost minus setup cost. And we apply here the Lagrangian method and Tucker method like this. We defined here this function LNP equal to this one for the Lagrangian, and we differentiate with respect to pi, lambda I, and zi. The given in equation results are 11, 12, 3rd, and 13. So after solving, we get according to Tucker method pi1 equal to this one. This is our selling price in ith interval. Some are the results. For fixed N equal to L upon N, revenue is monotonic increasing. That means we say here the revenue in second cycle is greater than first one, and the revenue in third one cycle is greater than revenue in second one, in this manner. So we proved here. Corollary. If T equal to L upon N, FNP is monotonic increasing. Similar. If the revenue is increasing, we see here the profit function is always in increasing manner. And both are maximal. Profit and revenue both are maximal at I equal to N. If AI is greater than, the PI is equal to this one, which is the previous equation, this one. And if AI is less than, then the PI equal to this one. Is just a positive value of the demand, and we get the PI to equal to this one. Now, how we have to find the optimum value of N? We said this data is a demand. This is a heterogeneous data. This is not a real data. I have just put here some data to illustrate the proposed model. The purchasing cost and so many. Here the deterioration rate are also considered here, theta, and the holding cost. And the time cycle is 100. Now, if we divided this into N equal 1 part, the first column, the second column of the table, the total sale item are this one, revenue this one, purchasing cost this one, total cost, and the profit is 31533.20. If we N equal to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if we divided into 12 equal parts of the time cycle, then the output are here. We observe here, if we divided into 10 equal parts, this 10 equal part, N equal to 10, please see here, the revenue is maximum and the profit is maximum, 40308.38, which is maximum for all this value. So we have to observe here, N equal to 10 is the optimal subdivision intervals for this particular case. And the prices, in first interval, P1 equal to this one, last column of this table, P1 equal to 375, P2 equal to 348, in decreasing manner, simultaneously. and at last P10 equal to 135. And in this way, we get the optimum profit for all in case. Okay. Conclusion, in this paper, a dynamic pricing policy is presented and deterioration factor has been taken into consideration. This paper theoretically proves that there exists an optimal number of price setting and respective optimal selling price also for getting the highest profit in a certain business setup. This is the observed as the dynamical pricing. We have named here the dynamic pricing because price is changed time to time, and which is calculated by a mathematical formula, which is conductor method we used here. One can forecast the range of these parameters with the help of the initial demand. These are our references. Thank you to all of you. Please ask some questions.
Any question? Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next presentation is by Mr. Mohammad Asifullah.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And the title of his presentation is Quality of Service Aware Multi-Radio Contiguous Algorithm.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you proceed.
Good afternoon, sir, and all the participants. The topic of my presentation is related to the wireless communication area. And these are the following 4 topics that I'm going to discuss in my presentation. Sir, is it visible?
Visible, but I say all the 4, 3, more than one slide is visible.
Oh, okay.
Now it is okay. Now it is okay. Now it is okay. You proceed.
Okay, sir. So these are the following 4 things that I'm going to discuss in my presentation. And first of all, let me tell you that this topic is related to the wireless communication area. And what happens is whenever any wireless device wants to connect to the internet or without wires, then we need to access some wireless spectrum. We need to have some wireless spectrum. We have heard about this 2G, 4G, 3G, and what is all this is the wireless spectrum that is available to us for to getting connected to internet, to let our devices getting connected to the internet. So what we are having today is we are having unlimited number of wireless devices getting connected to internet every day, and it is increasing day by day. And what we have is fixed current spectrum allocation policy. That is, whenever any device has been allocated a particular share of a spectrum, it is allocated to it for any number of time, and although it is using it or not. But what happens is the allocated spectrum, whenever assigned to any user, whether the user is using it or not, then the spectrum is always remains with the user. So this is this policy is ultimately leading to inefficiency in spectrum utilization. So what we need to have is some other technology that wherever any user is not using their share of a spectrum, then that share of a spectrum can be utilized at somewhere else. So this is the idea behind this cognitive radio technology. What happens is cognitive radio technology is whenever any user is not using their share of a spectrum, then that share of a spectrum can be allocated or assigned to some other users who are in need of it. So the definition of this behind this cognitive radio technology is that can change its transmitter parameters based on interaction with the environment in which it operates. That is, it is adaptable. It should be adaptable, that whenever any user is not using it, then somebody else should use it. So that efficient use of a spectrum should be there. This is the concept that new systems, new wireless devices are getting added to the network day by day. And what we have is current static frequency allocation. So both of these will lead to spectrum congestion. And the idea behind this cognitive radio concept is that opportunistic usage of some frequency bands, that whenever any user is not using it, we can allocate it to some other user. So this is the idea behind this cognitive radio concept. So there are two types of users in cognitive radio. First one is primary users, which are the licensed ones, which have been allocated their share of spectrum. And the second one is cognitive radio users. That is, they are the unlicensed ones. And whenever primary users are not using it, then their share of spectrum can be allocated to these CR users. So they are unlicensed. And what we have currently is that primary users are having their permanent infrastructure for this light. We generally see these towers, wireless towers installed at every few other kilometers. But for the other users, that is CR users, we do not have any infrastructure. So how they communicate, how they manage their communication is through this common control channel. A particular channel is dedicated so that they can communicate and maintain their communication within themselves. So they communicate using this common control channel. So what has been proposed in this, that whenever these CR users or cognitive radio users do not have their permanent infrastructure, so they usually coordinate this using this common control channel. So we need to maintain or give them some links so that they can establish their own link. So a new algorithm has been proposed in this paper, that quality of service aware multi-radio random algorithm in cognitive radio networks for Internet of Things, that we have to maintain their communication, the communication of CR users, and that too in a minimum possible time, so that the availability of channel can be exploited for maximum duration. So for this purpose, this algorithm has been proposed that whenever any two secondary users or CR users wants to communicate, then we have to allocate those channels only to according to requirement of them. Like for some users are in need of channels which we need for small type of communication, and some other users are there who need to communicate over video links, so they need more share of spectrum. So accordingly, we need to allocate channels according to their need, according to need of the CR users. So we need to overall we need to allocate the channels according to their requirement. So this is the idea behind this algorithm, and this is the algorithm that has been done and results have been obtained. So mainly I have already told what happens in this algorithm is that we are actually allocating only the required share of spectrum to the CR users. So what happens when we do such type of thing to CR users is that allocated or required share of spectrum can be allocated to the users according to their need. And by obeying this approach or by following this approach, we can observe that the time of getting connected to the other CR users can be reduced, and the availability time of channels can be exploited for maximum duration. Also, employing multiple radio transceivers instead of one further reduces the time to get it connected to the other users. Therefore, employing this multiple radio and quality of service criteria can significantly reduce the time to getting connected to other users, and the availability duration of channels can be exploited for maximum use, and thus overall efficiency of the spectrum can be exploited for maximum use. So this is the basic idea behind this cognitive radio technology and the proposed approach. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions? Participants, any questions from your side? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. So the next presentation is by Miss R. Abila. Miss R. Abila, and the topic is non-split geodesic parameters of some special graphs.
Good afternoon to all. Sir, I am audible?
Yes, audible. You proceed. You proceed, madam. You proceed.
Okay, sir. My name is Arabila, research scholar under the guidance of Dr. T. Binushalin, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, Scott Christian College, Nagargoil. Today, the topic of my presentation is non-split geodetic parameters of some special graphs. Okay, abstract. Let G be a graph. A set S is a geodetic set if I of S equal to V of G. I of U comma V consists of all the vertices lying in some UV geodesic of G. The cardinality of a minimum geodetic set of G is the geodetic number of G and is denoted by G of G. In this paper, we study the non-split geodetic number Gn of G of some special graphs. We compute non-split geodetic number of Helm graph, friendship graph, Ladar graph, circular Ladar graph, barbell graph, gear graph, tadpole graph, etc. Introduction. Let modulus of V and modulus of E denote the number of vertices and edges of a graph G respectively. The graph consists here are finite, undirected and symbol connected graph. The distance d of U comma V between two vertices U and V in a connected graph G is the length of a shortest UV path in G. A UV path of length d of U comma V is called UV geodesic. We denote I of U comma V to the set of all vertices lying on some UV geodesic of G. And for a non-empty subset S of V of G, I of S equal to union of I of U comma V. A set S of vertices of G is called a geodetic set in G if I of S equal to V of G. And a geodetic set of minimum cardinality is a minimum geodetic set of G. Cardinality of a minimum geodetic set in G is called geodetic number and is denoted by G of G. A set of vertices S in a graph G is a non-split geodetic set if S is a geodetic set and the induced subgraph V of G minus S is connected. The minimum cardinality of a non-split geodetic set is denoted by G in S of G. Next, I am going to explain some result on non-split geodetic of some special graphs. First of all, Helm graph, the definition is, it is designed from a wheel graph with n vertices by adjoining a pendant edge at each node of the cycle and is denoted by Hn. Here one example, the Helm graph H5, the vertices U1, U2, U3, U4, U5 form a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number of the Helm graph H5 is 5. Then theorem, for any Helm graph, the non-split geodetic number is n. Next one, friendship graph. It is constructed by n copies of the cycle C3 with a common vertex and is represented by Fn. Here, the friendship graph F3 is given. The vertices V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, V6 form a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number of the friendship graph F3 is 6. For any friendship graph, the non-split geodetic number is 2n. Next one, Ladar graph. The Ladar graph is obtained by the Cartesian product of the paths P2 and Pn. Given example, L4 is given. The set V1, V4 is a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number of the Ladar graph L4 is 2. For any Ladar graph, the non-split geodetic number GNS of L of n equal to 2 if n greater than or equal to 3. 3 if n equal to 2. Next one, circular Ladar graph. It is constructed by a Cartesian product of the cycle graph and path graph. Here one example, CL6 is given. Here V1 and U4 are the non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number of CL6 is 2. Then theorem, for any circular Ladar graph, the non-split geodetic number is 2 if n is even. 3 if n greater than or equal to 5 is odd. Then 4 if n equal to 3. Next graph is n barbell graph. It is obtained by connecting two copies of the complete graph Kn. Here B4 is given. Then the vertices V1, V2, V3, U1, U2, U3 form a non-split geodetic set. Theorem: for any barbell graph, the non-split geodetic number is 2 into n minus 1. Next graph, gear graph. It is a wheel graph Wn with a vertex set added between every pair of adjacent vertices of the cycle, adjacent vertices of the n cycle. Here, the gear graph G3 is given. The set U1, V2 is a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number of the gear graph G3 is 2. Theorem: for any gear graph, the non-split geodetic number is n minus 1. Next graph is a tadpole graph. It is obtained by a cycle graph CP to a path Pn with a bridge. Here on example, T5, 4 is given. Here, the vertices x1, x2, y4 form a non-split geodetic set. For any tadpole graph, the non-split geodetic number 2 if n is even, 3 if n is odd. Next one, lollipop graph. It is obtained by joining a complete graph Km to a path Pn with a bridge. Here, L5, 4 is given. Then the vertices x1, x2, x3, x4, y4 is a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number is 5. For any lollipop graph, the non-split geodetic number is m. Next graph is crown graph. It is obtained from the complete bipartite graph Kn, n by removing a perfect matching. For a crown graph, height 4, 4 is given. The vertices V1, U1 form a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number of the crown graph is 2. For any crown graph, the non-split geodetic number is 2. Next one, windmill graph. It is obtained by k copies of the complete graph Kn. For any windmill graph, the non-split geodetic number is k into n minus 1. Touch windmill graph. It is obtained by taking k copies of the cycle Cn with a common vertex. Here, D43 is given. The set V1, V6, V9 is a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the non-split geodetic number is 3. Then on theorem, for any Dutch windmill graph, the non-split geodetic number is k if n is even, 2k if n is odd. Next definition, fan graph. The fan graph is obtained by joining all the vertices of Pn to a further vertex called the center and contain n plus 1 vertex and 2n minus 1 edges. That is Fn equal to the path graph Pn plus k1. For a fan graph F6, the set y1, y3, y5, y6 is a non-split geodetic set. Therefore, the number is 4. For any fan graph, the non-split geodetic number equal to n by 2 plus 1 if n is even, n plus 1 by 2 if n is odd. Next graph, firecracker graph. N, k firecracker graph is a graph obtained from concatenation of n, k stars by linking one leaf from each. Here, f of 4, 5 is given. The non-split geodetic number is 12. Here, the non-split geodetic set is the set of all pendant vertices. For any firecracker graph, the non-split geodetic number is k into n minus 2. Next one, banana tree. A banana tree Bn, k is a graph obtained by concatenation one leaf of each n copies of a k star graph to a new vertex. Here, B3, 7 is given. The non-split geodetic number is 15. For any banana tree, the non-split geodetic number is n into k minus 2. Last one, coconut tree. A coconut tree CT of m, n is the graph from the path Pn by appending m new pendant edges at each end of Pn. Here, CT of 5, 3 is given. The non-split geodetic number is 6. For any coconut tree, the non-split geodetic number is m plus 1. These are my references. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions from the participant side? Any questions? Avila ma'am, I have one question.
Sir.
You have defined a barbell graph.
Yes.
What is a barbell graph?
Barbell graph is the two copies of a complete graph Kn by a cut edge.
Okay. So you consider only complete graph, not a
Yes, sir,
cycle.
yes.
Not a
Yes,
cycle.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Only complete graph of same size.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, very nice presentation. You may also continue your work on Northus-Gordon type relations.
Okay,
If
sir.
possible, you proceed. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very nice presentation. Very nice.
Okay, thank you, sir.
The next candidate is Dr. Zeenath Bhagat. The next presentation is by Dr. Zeenath Bhagat. And the topic is bilevel equilibrium problems. Dr. Zeenath Bhagat.
Hello.
You are audible, ma'am. You are audible.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Myself, Zeenath Bhagat, Research Scholar, Department of Mathematics, University of Jammu. The topic of my presentation is bilevel equilibrium problems with lower and upper bound. Here are the outline of my presentation: introduction, preliminaries, existence of solution, general stability, and references. So I'm starting with the introduction part. In 1999, Isaac et al. Studied an alternative version of variational inequality in Hausdorff topological vector space, and he gave an open question on the existence of U bar element of M such that this inequality holds for all V belongs to M, where M is a subset of Hausdorff topological vector space and F is a real function. Further, in 2000, Lee, in order to answer this open question, introduced the concept of extremal subset and gave a version of variational inequality using the KKM technique. Further, in 2002 and 2005, Chadley and Young introduced fixed point theorem for multi-valued mapping and the Fan KKM theorem with the concept of alpha-beta convexity. Next is preliminaries. For this, let U be a real locally convex Hausdorff topological vector space, M be a non-empty compact subset of U, and K be a multifunction, and F be a real function. Now we have going to define quasi-equilibrium problem, that is of finding any U bar belongs to K U bar such that this inequality holds for V belongs to K U bar. Similarly, we define bilevel equilibrium problems, that is of finding any U star bar belong to solution of quasi-equilibrium problem with lower and upper bound such that this inequality holds for all V star belongs to solution of QEP LUB, that denotes quasi-equilibrium problem with lower and upper bounds. We also denote the solution of this bilevel equilibrium problem with lower and upper bound by sol BEQ LUP. Similarly, we define the solution of quasi-equilibrium problem with lower and upper bound like sol QEP LUB. Now, existence of solution. In this section, we particularly deal with alpha beta quasi-convexity. To define this, we first of all define quasi-convex function. So for quasi-convex function, let K be a non-empty convex subset of a vector space U. Then F K to R is said to be quasi-convex if for all U V belongs to K and for all gamma belongs to 0, 1. This condition, that is F U plus gamma U minus V minus U less than equals to maximum of F of U, F of V holds. Now we define alpha beta convexity. For this, let U be a topological vector space and alpha beta belongs to R positive, alpha less than beta. Suppose F U to U cross U to R is a real function, then we say that this function F is a alpha beta quasi-convex in the first variable in the convex set M subset of U if for each U belongs to U the space and U1 U2 belongs to M and gamma belongs to U1 and holds these two conditions, that is alpha less than equals to F of U1 comma V less than equals to beta and alpha less than equals to F U2 comma V less than equals to beta, then this condition holds, that is alpha less than equals to F of gamma U1 plus 1 minus gamma U2 comma V less than equals to beta. Now we define a level set. For this, let U be a topological vector space and F be a real function and theta belongs to R. Then we define a level set on theta like this, like the set this, that is alpha less than equals to theta plus F of U comma B less than equals to beta. Further, we establish some condition for the solution set of these bilevel equilibrium problems with lower and upper bounds. For this, lemma is for the equilibrium problem with lower and upper bounds. Let us assume these five conditions. Then the equilibrium problem with lower and upper bounds has a solution, that is there exists U bar element of M such that U bar belongs to K U bar, and this condition holds for all V belongs to K U bar. Also, the solution of this equilibrium problem with lower and upper bound is compact. Now we have a remark, that is the set this is closed if F is continuous, but its converse is not true. For to show that its converse is not true, we have considered a following example. You can see this example. Now we have a main result. Let us suppose that SF is a convex and all the conditions that mentioned on the verb lemma satisfy along with these additional conditions. Then the bilevel equilibrium problem with lower and upper bound has a solution. That is, there exists U bar star belongs to M such that U bar star belongs to SF, and this condition hold for all V star belongs to SF. Also, the solution set of problems of bilevel equilibrium problem with lower and upper bound is compact. Now we have general stability. In this section, we define a set del like this, like a triple order pair K, H, F, where K is a continuous in M with compact convex values. H is also continuous function, and the F that we have defined from M cross M to R for all V belongs to M. This F function is alpha beta quasi convex on M. For all V star belongs to SF. Then we say that this H dot comma V star is alpha is AB quasi convex on SF. Now let B1, B2 be compact set in normed space, and we define a Hausdorff metric like this. H B1 B2 is equals to maximum of H star B1 B2 H star B2 B1, where we define H star B1 B2 like this. Now for any X1 X2, we define a row like this, where H is a Hausdorff metric. Thus, this set del along with row is a metric space. Now we have a theorem, that is the set del along with row is a complete metric space. We have another theorem, the multi-valued map OM from del to 2SF is upper semi-continuous with compact values. Here are the references that I have used in my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next presentation is by Ms. Sampara Tiwari. The title is Generalized Bent Negabent Boolean Functions.
Hello. Hello.
You are audible, ma'am. You
Yes,
proceed.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, all of you. Myself, Sampada Tiwari, research scholar in the Department of Mathematics, NIT Raipur. Today, the topic of my presentation is generalized bent negabent Boolean functions. These are the overview. First of all, introduction, then motivation, main results, conclusion, and at last, references. Introduction. A Boolean function on n variables is a function from F2n to F2, where F2 be the prime field of characteristic 2 and F2n be the n-dimensional vector space over F2. The set of all Boolean functions is denoted by Bn. A generalized Boolean function on n variables is a function from F2n to Fp, and the set of all generalized Boolean function is denoted by Bnp. A generalized Boolean function can be expressed with the help of its algebraic normal form. If f is any generalized Boolean function, then the algebraic normal form of f is defined as f of x1 x2 xn equals to summation a belongs to f to n mu a product of I equals to 1 to n xi to the power ai, where mu a belongs to f2. And the algebraic degree of f is defined as maximum of a belongs to f to n summation I equals to 1 to n ai such that mu a not equals to 0, where a belongs to f to n. The Walsh-Hedman transform of a generalized Boolean function at any point lambda belongs to f to n is the complex valued function defined as wfp lambda equals to 2 to the power minus n by 2 summation x belongs to f to n zeta to the power f of x minus 1 to the power lambda dot x, where zeta is the pth primitive root of unity. For p equals to 2, we obtain the Walsh-Hedman transform of classical Boolean function. A Boolean a function f belongs to f bnp is known as generalized Boolean function if its Walsh spectrum is flat, that is mod of wfp lambda equals to 1, where lambda belongs to f to n. The Nega-Hedman transform of a generalized Boolean function at any point lambda belongs to f to n is defined as nfp lambda equals to 2 to the power minus n by 2 summation x belongs to f to n zeta to the power fx plus lambda dot x omega to the power summation of xi, where zeta is the pth primitive root of unity and omega is the 2pth root of unity. Again, for p equals to 2, we obtain the Nega-Hedman transform of classical Boolean. A function is called generalized Nega-Bend function if nfp lambda equals to 1 for all lambda belongs to f to n. The Nega cross relation of any two functions f and g belongs to BNP, that is generalized Boolean functions, at any point lambda belongs to f to n is defined as CFGP lambda equals to summation x belongs to f to n zeta to the power fx plus gx plus lambda minus 1 to the power x dot lambda. If f equals to g, then the sum CFP lambda is known as Nega autocorrelation of f at lambda. Let f to n equals to s plus t, where dimension of t is m and m is less than equals to n. Then the dimension of s will be n minus m. And if a generalized Boolean function is bent with respect to t, then the dual of ft with respect to t is defined as wftp st equals to minus 1 to the power ft dual st. Motivation. They provide several constructions and classifications of bent and Nega-Bend functions. With the help of Parker's result, Smith studied the Boolean functions which are bent and Nega-Bend simultaneously, that is, bent Nega-Bend Boolean functions. Stenica investigated various properties of Nega-Hedman transform. They provide a result on the Nega cross relation of two Boolean functions. These are the main result. Here, we study the generalized Boolean functions which are bent and Nega-Bend simultaneously, that is generalized bent Nega-Bend functions. And we also obtain a relation between generalized Nega cross relation and Nega-Hedman transform. This is the theorem which we studied. Let f2n equals to s plus t, where dimension of t equals to m and m is less than equals to n, so that dimension of s equals to n minus m. Let f be a generalized bent Nega-Bend function, that is bent with respect to s and bent with respect to t. Then ft dual is also belongs to f2n to fgba function from f2n to fp, that is let fgba both are generalized Boolean functions. Then the generalized Nega cross relation CFGPU equals to summation v belongs to f to n zeta to the power fv plus gv plus u minus 1 to the power v dot u equals to I to the power weight of u summation z belongs to f to n nfpz bar minus 1 to the power z dot u. If f equals to g, then the Nega auto cross relation, that is CFPU, equals to summation v belongs to f to n zeta to the power fv plus u minus 1 to the power v dot u equals to I to the power weight of u summation z belongs to f to n mod of nfp z square minus 1 to the power z dot u. Conclusion. Band functions given by Rothers of band functions are also very useful in cryptography as well as coding theory. In this paper, we study a generalized Boolean function which is band as well as negaband, that is band-negaband function. We also study a relation between nega cross relation and nega Hadamard transform of generalized Boolean functions. These are the differences. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any queries? Okay, madam. Nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Next by Mr. Shabir Ahmad Malik.
Yes, sir, I am here.
Yes. And his title is On the Zeros of Polar Derivatives of a Polynomial. Sir, you proceed. Mr. Sabir, you can start now.
Yes, sir.
You can start. You can start.
Yes, sir. Is the screen is visible?
No, screen is not visible.
Wait, sir.
Not visible.
Sorry,
Not
sir.
visible.
Sorry for the interruption, sir. You can take another participant.
Okay, right.
Okay, sir.
So the next presentation is by Dr. Qazi Abdab Kabir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I am
you
here.
proceed. You proceed, sir. Your title is Fixed Point Property of Fuzzy Metric Spaces with the Contradiction Conditions.
Okay, sir.
Okay, you start, please.
Sir, my screen is visible.
Visible, but slides are not visible.
Just a minute, sir. I will try it. Sir, is visible?
Yes, visible. Yes, visible.
Okay, so very good afternoon to all of you. Today I am present my a research article, a fixed point property of fuzzy metric spaces with conduction conditions. So in this paper, we're using alpha beta conduction function complete fuzzy metric space and establish sequentially characterization properties of fuzzy metric space. We prove the existence of common fixed point theorem for conduction mapping in fuzzy metric space using the property of Leipzig fuzzy metric space and give a few models on the side of our outcomes. We also inaugurate some motivating result based on Leipzig complete fuzzy conductive mappings. So this is the keyword which I have used: fuzzy metric space, conduction mapping, fixed point, Leipzig property, and conduction functions. So first of all, I will present an introduction, a small introduction. Topology is the study of geometric properties that does not depend only on the exact shape of the object, but rather it acts on how the points are connected to each other. In fact, topology deals with those properties that remain invariant under the continuous transformation of a map. Zaida 15 presented and examined the idea of a fuzzy set in his fundamental paper. The investigation of fuzzy sets studied a broad fuzzy of a few numerical ideas and has application to different part of applied sciences. So the idea of fuzzy set measurement spaces was presented at first by Kamsal and Maishlik 10. Banach constructions standard is unquestionably an old style effect of current examination. Specifically, Mahit 13 presented the idea of fuzzy conductive mapping, which grew the class of fuzzy compressions is Georgi and Sapena 6 and numerous characters. So fixed point theory is one of the most powerful tools, and it is an active area of research with wide range of application in various directions. This concept has been established in different directions by several others, such that also a fuzzy set is very interesting and constructive for application in real worlds. So the alpha, beta, and theta conductive type mapping has generalized of Banach conduction principle. In this paper, we introduce Leipzig mapping with alpha, beta of conduction functions. So Abbas, Samit, and Vatlo 14 presented the idea of conductive mapping and used similar ideas to make a few intriguing fixed statement hypotheses in setting of metric spaces. Thereafter, unique fixed point issues for constructions in fuzzy measurement spaces were talked about quickly by different authors. So Zaida 1965 introduced and studied the concept of fuzzy set. In his seminal paper, The Study of Fuzzy Set, initiated an executive physifications of several mathematical concepts and has application to various branches of applied sciences. The concept of fuzzy metric spaces was introduced initially by Kamsal and Maishlik in 1975. Later on, George, Vernamy, Michels, lot of authors have discussed and published many papers in fuzzy metric space. So here is the preliminaries, some definitions, and then I have give some concept of soft Banach space, but the introduction of in fuzzy sets, and then is the main result of theorem number 4.1 and theorem number 4.2. I think one of two theorems I have present here and some references. So thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome, sir.
Any questions from the participant side? Okay, sir. The next presentation is by Ms. Lubna Safi. Lubna Safi. The topic is an overview of cancer burden in North and South India.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
You are audible. You are audible.
Okay. Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, visible, ma'am. You proceed.
A very good afternoon to all. I'm Lubna Shafi, doing my research under the supervision of Dr. Parvez Iqbal, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics in B.S. Abdur Rahman Faisal Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. Today, I'm going to present my paper entitled as An Overview of Cancer Burden in North and South India. This is the outline of my paper. First, I will give introduction to cancer. Then I will define the objectives of my paper, and after that, results and conclusion. Cancer is a generic term for a large group of diseases that can affect any part of the body. It is caused by a series of successive gene mutations that alter cell functioning as well as genetic disorders induced by inherited factors. Cancer mainly comprises of 4 stages. First stage is initiation stage, second is promoted stage, third is tumor stage, and the fourth is metastatic stage. In the first stage, changes occur to the genotype of the cell, then a cell has to be promoted fully to become cancerous. Tumor development is caused by the excretion of mitogens known as vascular endothelial growth factor, which encourage the formation of vascular roots to cancer cells. Cancer becomes metastatic at the last stage, resulting in the movement of cancer cells into the bloodstream. Cancer is currently one of the leading public concerns and the second major cause of death following cardiovascular diseases globally. The global burden of cancer has risen to 19.3 million cases and 10 million cancer deaths in 2020. This burden will continue to rise in future worldwide because of the increased life expectancy and increase in the proportion of elderly population, population size, etc. Due to the rise in survival rate, lifestyle alterations, rapid urbanization and globalization, progressive regulation of infectious diseases have led to the rise of cancer and other non-communicable diseases. Because of these changes, the population would face an increase in the incidence and mortality of cancers in future. Cancer has emerged as a serious public health issue in India, as it has been estimated by Indian Council of Medical Research that in 2020 there were 13.9 lakh cancer cases, and in 2025 there will be 15.7 lakh. That is, there will be an increase of 20% in the cancer burden. The incidence of cancer in the country will continue to rise in the future as a result of rising life expectancy, growth in the number of old-aged people, huge population, lifestyle changes, and the lack of any mass screening programs. India is now growing rapidly and will most likely become a developed country in the next several decades, allowing it to participate in the global development. As a result, it is vital to examine the status of cancer in India so that preventive measures may be implemented in future to manage this calamity. The aim of my work is to evaluate the cancer burden of North and South regions of India and to identify the region highly affected by cancer in India and the risk factors responsible for it. The dataset for this study was obtained from the website indiastatehealth.com for the period 2009 to 2018. In this work, I have not used any mathematical or statistical model because this work is under process and I have just analyzed the cancer burden of India. After examining the data, it has been concluded that North region of India is mostly affected by cancer and UP is the leading contributor, having 21,22,149 cases for the period 2009 to 2018. The graph shows the state-wise distribution of cancer burden of North and South India and demonstrates that among all the states, the state of UP is the most affected in both the regions of India. Here you can see the growing burden of cancer in UP. From the literature, it has also been observed that the major risk factors contributing to cancer in this region are chewing tobacco, smoking tobacco, and unhealthy diet. From this study, it has been concluded that North India, particularly UP, with a significantly growing cancer burden, must take major steps to minimize cancer incidence rates by reducing the use of tobacco and keeping healthy eating habits. Cancer prevention and control programs should be established district-wise by the government so that people will be aware of the signs and symptoms of the cancer as well as the risk factors responsible for the disease. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions from the participants? Okay. The next presentation is by Ms. Priyanka. The title is Two Dominating Sets and the Two Dominating Polynomials of Spider Graph.
Yes, sir.
Yes. You can start your presentation.
Okay. So, wait, sir. Sir.
You proceed. You proceed.
Hello, sir.
You proceed, ma'am. You proceed.
Hello.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, I am audible. Audible, you are audible, you proceed. You are audible.
Wait, sir, wait. Sir, can you able to see my PPT?
PPT is not visible.
Wait, sir, please, sir.
Priyanka ma'am. Priyanka ma'am. Mr. Sabir, sir. Mr. Sabir.
Hello, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. I am ready.
Okay. No, you continue your presentation. Now after that, Mr. Priyanka will continue.
Am I, sir, audible? And is the screen is visible now?
Yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Is
You
the
proceed.
screen is visible now, sir?
Visible. Your screen is visible. You are audible.
Okay.
You proceed.
Okay, sir. Very good morning, Morgan, sir. Myself is Shibir Ahmed Malik, Department of Mathematics, University of Kashmir, Srinagar. I am going to present the paper entitled On the Zeros of the Polar Derivative of a Polynomial. The main contents of the paper: introduction and the main results. In introduction, the following result due to the Enstrom-Coquet theorem is well known in the theory of distribution of the zeros of polynomial, and it is very significant and plays a very significant role in the distribution of zeros of polynomials. Determining the upper bound for the modeling of the zeros of a polynomial and its derivative are very important problems in mathematics, and there are plenty of such results available in the literature regarding the distribution of the zeros of a polynomial. Since the time of Cauchy has established the result on the zeros of polynomials, and then it has been refined and generalized in many directions by various researchers, by taking the assumptions on hypothesis on the restrictions on the coefficients, and then established an Enstrom-Coquet theorem. Theorem 1.1: if P of z is a polynomial of degree n such that this monotonicity condition holds, then P of z does not vanish in mod z greater than 1. This means that all the zeros lie in closed disk of radius 1. Concerning the model of zeros of polar derivative of a polynomial, then later mathematicians started investigating about the zeros of polar derivative, and in this paper we have established many more results that generalize and refines already proven results regarding the polar derivative of a polynomial. The first result regarding the polar derivative of a polynomial is due to G.L. Reddy. He showed that if P of Z is a polynomial of degree n and d alpha is a polar derivative satisfying this type of monotonicity conditions, and then d alpha P of Z, all the zeros of d alpha P of Z lie in this district. And after that, by reversing the monotonicity conditions, he established again same type of result. When alpha is equal to 0 and d alpha is a polar derivative, then all the zeros of d naught pz lie in this. Later further he generalized G.L. Reddy. He generalized again its own results to d alpha. When taking alpha as a generalizer, alpha is a pole, d alpha is a polar derivative, and being alpha is a pole. Polar derivative of a polynomial, theorem 1.4, he established that when we impose the restrictions on the coefficients of this type, then all the zeros of d alpha pz lie in this type of district. Theorem 1.5, he established d alpha, all the zeros of d alpha p of z lies in the district when we reverse the monotonicity condition on the coefficients. In this paper, we have established, we present the multifaceted generalization of all the above results. Theorem 2.1, which establishes, which says that let P of Z is a polynomial of degree n and d alpha is a polar derivative of P of Z with respect to d alpha, and satisfying the coefficients satisfy this type of monotonicity where if n is even and n is odd, then all the zeros of d alpha P of Z lie in this. Theorem 2.2, which gives the multifaceted generalization of theorem 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4, 1.5 due to G.L. Reddy et al. Let P of Z is a polynomial of degree n and d alpha is a polar derivative such that for some real number t greater than 0 and lambda less than or equal to n minus 1 greater than 0, and this type of monotonicity condition satisfied by the coefficients, then all the zeros of the d alpha P of Z lie in this district. And the beauty in this theorem 2.2 is that when we put lambda n is equal to n minus 1 and t is equal to 1 in theorem 2.2, we get theorem 1.4. If alpha is equal to 0, we get theorem 1.2. Again, theorem 2.3, let P of Z is a polynomial of degree n satisfying this type of monotonicity condition in the reverse direction, then all the zeros of d alpha P of Z lie in this district. And remark 2, if we put lambda is equal to n minus 1 and t is equal to 1 in theorem 2.3, we get theorem 1.5, and alpha is equal to 0. And when the pole is at 0, when pole is equal to 0, we get theorem 1.3. In particular, if for t is equal to 0, the bound obtained in theorem 2.2 can be considerably improved, and in the next result, we obtain a ring-shaped region containing all the zeros of d alpha P of Z for the superficial case when t is equal to 1. The radius, the outer radius of the ring obtained in the next is smaller than this quantity. Next result, theorem 2.4 is if P of Z is a polynomial of degree n and d alpha is a polar derivative with respect to alpha such that for some 0 less than lambda less than or equal to 1 satisfying this type of monotonicity conditions, and lambda being a parameter less than or equal to n minus 1, then all the zeros of d alpha P of Z lies in the enveloped region of outer radius k1 and inner radius k2. While k1 is this type of quantity and k2 is this type of quantity, while in k2 m1 and m2 being this type of quantities, and b is equal to this and c is equal to this. For n is equal to n minus lambda is equal to n minus 1, and alpha a1 plus n a minus 1 is when it is positive in theorem 2.1. In theorem 2.4, then it refines theorem 1.4 due to G.L. Reddy and et al. And finally, the references. Thank you.